Thanks for tuning in, everyone, for another Flies 4. With us today is Mr. Alec Gerbec out of the great state of Montana. Alec is a Umpqua Signature Tyer. He has guided all over the planet, and I think his last guiding stint was in the Seychelles, which has led him to be a program director for yellow dog fly fishing for Africa and the Indian Ocean, kind of specializing in that Seychelles destination. So we're really excited to have him on and talk about flies for saltwater fishing, kind of in that Indian Ocean area. So Alec, thank you for for making some time and coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Russ. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you a bit more as I just returned after being over in the Seychelles for 2 weeks. So a lot of this stuff was fresh on my mind.
The tan is still in your cheeks. You look great. So obviously you're in Bozeman. What are kind of home waters for you? Where are you fishing and where do you spend most of your time in the salt?
Yeah, so here in Bozeman, it's going to be quite a few different options. And really, that's one of the hardest parts about living in Montana is when it's on, everything is on almost. So you're almost flipping a coin and wondering what happened the day that you didn't go here because you went there. So I don't know, man. A lot of time, just locally on the Gallatin, East Gallatin, that stuff's great. I do have a jet boat now, so I can kind of move around into some weird waters like the headwaters, the Missouri, things like that. A lot of love on the Yellowstone. That place is mysterious. Will often serve you up a can of whoop ass. So it's nice to be challenged and leave wondering. So I really like the Yellowstone quite a bit too.
That's awesome.
Um,
And I know on the saltwater front, like you jump around a bit. Like I know the Seychelles are kind of your baby and you get to go quite regularly. But you also bounce around to a lot of other cool salty destinations.
Yeah, and to call one home is impossible to say. Any opportunity I get to go saltwater fishing, I'm going to take advantage of. I just love it to death. I love how dynamic it is with not only the species, but the tides and why, and the food sources and all that fun thing. So, last year, for example, I did Turks and Caicos, I did Puerto Rico, I did Cuba, I did the coast of Maine. Seychelles. And this coming year, I have all sorts of amazing stuff lined up too, and I look forward to every opportunity.
The flats are such a unique experience for anyone who hasn't done it or they've got their first kind of trip they're looking at. Like I think one of the coolest things is you get the instant feedback. So like when you did it wrong, when you did it right, or if you tied on the right bug or the wrong bug based on the reaction of the fish, which is pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I totally agree with that. Whether you're a fly tyer or not, just yeah, it's very visual. You're often sight fishing to that fish, and he's giving you a really good response. Leading up to that, obviously, you got to bring your presentation. But once you're in the game per se, that fish is going to give you that reaction, tell you, oh, that fly is perfect, or that is the worst thing you could have given me.
Um, do you have a favorite saltwater species that you like to chase?
To the next one that I see. All fish are created equal, if you ask me. Obviously, lots of love towards the bigger fish, being tarpon, giant trevally, all those sort of things. But I'm pretty hard pressed not to put things like bonefish and redfish at the very top of that list as well. They're all cool. They all want to play the game, and I just like when they're honest, when they want to eat your fly. So I would say that's one of the delineations, if you will.
Good, honest fish out there. When did you first become an Umpqua Tyer?
Geez, I think that was probably, I'd put it at like 2017, something like that. And my first fly I submitted was the Alphlexo Crab, and actually ended up winning Saltwater Fly of the Year at IFTD. So that was really, really cool. And obviously, there's kind of a lot of story behind it being created and where it is today. And yeah, that's where it started. And I continue to develop things, and I'm currently working on some really neat stuff for the future as well.
Well, sweet. Like, so talk to us a little bit about like your process of like going to these different destinations, seeing that visual feedback you're getting from the fish as a fly designer. Like, how does that influence your designs?
Yeah, so here at Yellow Dog, obviously I get to look at a lot of flight recommendations for these different destinations from the lodges and from our other program directors and also from our anglers that we're sending out the door. We have a lot of amazing fishermen and fisher ladies heading out and tying their own flies or can at least speak to what they're fishing. And so I'm trying to gather as much information from these guys before I go to a trip. Okay, this is more of a crab fishery or shrimp fishery, whatever it may be. And then it's hard for me to leave on this trip being fully satisfied with what's in my fly box if I haven't been there. It's only till I return where I'm finally like satisfied and get to sit down in the vise once again. So for me, it is taking a look at other anglers' fly boxes while I'm there, talking to the guides if possible. If they have flies, I really like to look in them as well, and just try to get some takeaways, whether it's length or weight or color, whatever it is, and then start kind of tumbling it around in my head in relation to different styles I like to tie or materials I like to tie with. And then yeah, try to create something that maybe could fix a problem, create a solution essentially.
I love that. Well, let's with that, I'd love to kind of build on that. You touched on the Alphlexo as your first fly with Umpqua. I'd love to jump in and talk about some of your flies for saltwater destinations and your signature patterns. Let's kick it off with the Alphlexo.
Yeah, so this was a fly tied out of need, honestly. I showed up to the Seychelles my first year guiding, seeing this amazing saltwater fishery, St. Francois Atoll, with lots of Indo-Pacific permit crawling around and actually pretty low numbers successfully caught by the end of each season. And these are like 9-month seasons. So that's a lot of days on the water with not much conversion, if you will. So in my first year, talking to a lot of the very experienced guides, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they'd caught them on before. And then as I started fishing anglers, just seeing reactions out of these fish on certain patterns. So, there was a crab that's kind of still kicking around there, the Orbis crab, essentially that was utilizing this same material for the body, the Flexo tubing. And what I immediately realized was, wow, that stuff lands very softly and has a really good profile. You're really imitating a crab's profile quite nicely. So, with that, I also noticed a lot of light colors were working. And then, just started playing with that body material. Now, we struggled to find it for a while. We couldn't figure out what the heck it was. And it wasn't until we started working on our Yamaha 40 Enduros where we had pulled off the cowling and some of the wiring was like, had a conduit around it. And I was like, oh my God, that's the Flexo. So we're online, we're trying to figure out wire conduiting, and eventually we run into it. And lo and behold, there's a bunch of different colors out there. And so, we get it over. A customer brings us a bunch, and we start tying with it, and immediately find out it's a very frustrating material to tie with. And this was as a team, while it is my fly, this is definitely a team effort. We were all playing with the stuff, working on different aspects of it, the weighting, the hook, how the legs were, just to make this thing swim right and get the reactions. And, within a couple months' time, we saw instant turnaround. All of a sudden, we were converting fish left and right. And, we went from a season on average of landing 15 to 20 fish up to 60 or 70 fish in a season once that fly came around. So,
Holy cow.
yeah, really, really cool to see, that conversion. And, it continues to be evolved, or it's evolving currently. We just got back from fishing St. Francois Atoll last week, and they've already got completely new spins on it. So it's really cool that it's continuing to kind of grow into a new thing, and see it being now fished in other places around the world, which is cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just it was interesting to see the confidence in the guides grow too. Now, I'm sure plenty of other flies could probably work for these Indo-Pacific permit, but just like all these other fisheries where, a flats crab or a raghead or something like that, once a guide has that confidence, that goes over to the angler, everyone's going into that very, devilish fish with a pretty positive outlook on the whole situation. And I think that's a huge attribution to catching those things.
Oh, confidence is key, and I feel like a lot of the Umpqua Signature Designer program is essentially doing, you let a fly designer do all the hard work and build all those little subtleties into a pattern. You just get to hand someone confidence to go catch a fish, which is pretty cool. It's kind of staying in the saltwater theme. You've mentioned him a couple times, but you're quite a redfish aficionado as well. So let's talk about something that's a little bit more specific for them.
Yeah, that's definitely a top three saltwater fish for me, by the way. And
Awesome.
talking about an honest fish, okay? It's not like you have to travel to the end of the world to go catch these things. And if you deliver a fly, they're going to play the game. And they have an awesome eat. It's very visual. They tail, all that fun stuff. So if you haven't redfish, go red fishing, period.
Absolutely.
um, yeah, like you can speak to it too, right, Russ? It's such a thrill, and whether they're big or small, obviously, they're come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and situations. Yeah, the po' boy was designed when I was down in Louisiana, and we were on a trip with a couple guys, and we had shown up with what we thought was some great flies, and turned out they were too small or just not heavy enough, not big enough hook. And we decided to bring down some things as far as tying materials and hooks went, but not very much. And so after the day of kind of getting our butts handed to us, seeing a lot of big bull reds that just looked like they weren't seeing our fly, we were, sat down at the drawing board and said, okay, we need something that we can plop out there. They're going to see it. It's going to have the movement, kind of imitate some different things, but didn't seem like those fish cared too much. And had a very limited amount of materials to do so. So, the po' boy is essentially a late night session of a group of, guys sitting around a table and coming up with a fly that kind of is a bait fish, kind of is a shrimp, has a really good weight and that jig hook to essentially plop and paint a mustache on a bull redfish for them to eat it. And you can speak to it, Russ, right? It's like you have to have a fly in the zone, the kind of right size and color, and that's about it.
And then they eat it immediately.
Yeah. So,
Um,
and it's kind of it's a little bit reverse of a lot of my flies. I tend to add a lot of steps and, get pretty intricate. This one's, a little more towards the guide fly, if you will. That's just a couple of materials and fairly quick to tie.
and I think it's one of those flies that's made its way onto a lot of those guides lists for clients coming down to fish Louisiana in particular, especially that 1/0 size.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. That is an awesome little intro to some Alec Gerbec saltwater patterns. It's worth mentioning that he's got one of the cooler technical dry fly caddis patterns on there called the resting caddis. I know it was a saltwater episode, but if you guys haven't checked out that one, definitely do. All of Alec's flies are up on the Umpqua website for you guys to check out, and all the colors and sizes. Are there any other kind of Umpqua saltwater flies that you've come across and made their home in your box for your different saltwater destinations that you might want to kind of call out?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll kind of keep it to the newer end of things, the past recent years. Perhaps the coolest crab I've seen come out in recent years, and just love its concept because it is the definition of fishy or buggy or whatever you want to call it, is Doug McKnight's Danger Muffin. Such a cool concept. And I mean, when you look at that thing up close, it's like, oh yeah, that's going to get the reaction I want. It's just such a cool design. And I know Doug pretty well and watched him tie it quite a bit. And he makes it look like it's a 1 minute fly when he ties the thing. It's so, it's so cool, but it's a pretty dynamic bug. But yeah, it's that's a special one. I know it's made a lot of people happy in
Yeah.
recent years, catching some nice fish. And then, one fly that I'm really excited to start fishing that's brand new in the catalog is Chewy's Tarpinator. A lot of tarpon flies these days tend to be more kind of marabou-y tarp or craft furish, kind of those things, which I love to death. But there's something to be said about rabbit strip. It is, one of the best things to fish for a fish for,
Hmm.
and I love that he's brought this, sleek, kind of basic looking design, in a contemporary look to the catalog. I think that's going to be a really productive fly for, some of the destinations we fish. And, some cases it might be a little big for, let's say, Keys during the, migration or something, maybe not. But a lot of our places like Cuba, Belize, Mexico, you name it, that have these very happy tarpon. I know that thing is going to be a staple in everyone's box.
Make everyone really happy too.
Mhm.
Well, that's awesome. I again, check out all these flies on the website. And I think what I'd like to dive into, and we didn't really touch on it as we move into some of the technique side, is how do you go about selecting color? Like your Alphexo, your polar prawn, you've got a variety of different colors in them. They're all kind of salty colors, right? White, olive, tan. But like, what's your thought process when it comes to selecting a fly color based on the destination you're fishing?
Yeah, so there's definitely the old adage of fish the color of the bottom of the ocean that you're fishing, whether it's sand or turtle grass or coral or whatever that is. That plays a big role in there for sure. But this also then goes back to the conversation we were having earlier of like, what are the guides seeing? What
Mm.
is kind of the trend? We go to Mexico, does it have yellow eyes? That sort of thing. Like, so yeah, sometimes there's just no real reason behind it, at least what you and I can determine. So yeah, again, kind of pulling a lot from, uh, the cumulative, all the anglers together. And I'm not going to be right 100% of the time with my theory. So I'm looking towards it. So now, with the Alflexo, we fished it in a lot of different situations where, sometimes you were on light bottom. And so you wanted the white or the tan. And then, moving more into the coral and the triple glass, you wanted an olive or brown or something like that. So, yeah, definitely the old adages, but also keeping in mind what the anglers are seeing out there as well.
Um, on the uh, on the fly side still, like what I'm curious, how many shots do you give a fly before you're just like, I need a change? What kind of is the catalyst for change there when it comes to like, I need something fresh at them. They don't like it. Is it one fish? Is it 10 fish? Like, is it reading individual fish? I'm just trying to get inside your mind on kind of rotating through some stuff to find those answers.
Yeah, I think you got to be brutally honest with yourself as far as did you actually make a good shot? And we're all guilty of this of being like, no, I didn't like it. We should probably change. Yeah, before you make that change, this is not like you're nymphing where you have 1,000 different nymphs in your box that you can change and change and change and change. Eventually, you're going to run out of options in your box, and you really got to look at that fish's behavior. Was he really in the mood? Was he a player? And how did he react? Did he come all the way to the fly, stop, and then back away and go, or did he just kind of keep going like he didn't see it? So it's kind of per fish, and yeah, you just as long as you're honest with yourself, you'll stay confident at least and hang in there a little bit longer.
I love it. I love it. Is there anything on the presenting side of the flat style fishing that you feel like is really important to kind of keys to success, if you will?
Yeah, and we touched on a little bit earlier is just really reading that fish's behavior, and if you have the time to do so, fishing the fly appropriately or the particular fly. Fish that are more stationary, typically you're going to have to fish them a little bit closer because they're not on the move and they may be focused on a very particular food source. Whereas that, cruising or scavenging fish is a little bit more opportunistic and will probably require a bigger lead and a faster pace strip.
You have a preference of what kind of fish you fish to?
That's a good question. I think it's per fish, honestly. Permit, you know, shoot. If it's by itself, the tailing, I want it by itself. I don't like multiple tailing fish because there's always one you don't see. If it's a group that are moving, I love that. That's great. They're going to be a little bit more, ambitious to get it before the other fish, sort of thing. So I will just leave it at the permit, I guess.
I feel like there's just so many parallels. Like I'm not a hunter, but a lot of people that do, where it's such the individual creature that you're targeting, and that feedback, that kind of interaction you get to have with that little animal doing its thing, and you're just kind of interjecting yourself into its world and trying not to ruin it.
Yep.
Um, well, sweet man. I'd love to transition us kind of into our gear chat section. I know you've been fishing this stuff for a little bit, but I'd love to hear your opinion on Umpqua's new Pink Deceiver HD fluorocarbon.
Awesome. Yeah. First of all, great stuff. I, went into it just with an open mind, like, could this be different than clear? Let's see. And, it took me a little while to get onto the saltwater where I could apply it in a number of occasions instead of just like, well, I tied up a leader and I had 2 shots today. Yeah, I was literally just in the Seychelles for 2 weeks. And so we, got to fish it quite extensively in very clear water, white sand bottoms, and then other situations where it's deeper, turtle grass, coral. Maybe my biggest takeaway from it all was its abrasion resistance. For whatever reason, I felt like it performed a lot better than any clear materials I fished, whether it was Umpqua or Seaguar or whoever. So I was really impressed with that. And then its ability to kind of stay subtle, even if it was abraded. It is so sunny and bright in the Seychelles when your fluorocarbon leader gets dinged at all. It's like, a beacon. Like I need to change that right away. So anyway, like abrasion resistance was quite noticeable for me, and I really liked that. And then, a lot of the leaders that we're fishing over there, leader designs, is just built out of leader material. We're not using tapered leaders per se. So whether it's a bimini twist with a furl to your fly line, or just a straight piece for like the GTs and stuff like that. So, really getting to test this in the full length of leader, if you will. And yeah, I didn't have any situation where I thought it made a negative impact towards those fish. I felt like it performed very well. There was never a situation that I said, oh man, I should probably go back to clear, even on the white sand. So that was really cool, and that gave me a lot more confidence to continue to play with it more.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there any advantage if you're building your whole leader out of pink for like, as far as where you're false casting and to drop the fly, get that extra little visual component there? Did you feel like there was anything there or not? Not as much.
No, not as much. No, I just like that it was not a bright material. When we're building these long leaders, if you ever look at these things with an underwater, photo, a clear leader coming through clear water is bright as could be. And now I haven't gotten to see pink stuff in an underwater photo yet, but I bet you it's going to be a lot more drab and subtle, where those fish aren't thrown off by something shiny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had awesome success. I know there's a bunch of saltwater anglers that have been taking this on a lot of their trips, and we've heard hosted reports where kind of everyone moves over to pink after a handful of permit get landed on it. And again, it's that confidence thing where it's like, all right, if that's the difference maker, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time I fished it was actually Atlantic salmon on the Restigouche this last summer, and the guides were pulling out, Maxima chameleon, and like that was my first like, oh my god, they have confidence in this, brown leader material, and I'm fishing to this, mythical beast. Do I really want to put this on? And lo and behold, everyone's catching their fish on it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try the pink, and caught some fish on it. It was awesome. So yeah, it's just kind of getting past the visibility of clear material,
Mm-hmm.
and that yeah, you'll fish it with confidence.
Well, nice. having being such a traveling angler and fly such kind of an important component of kind of any destination trip, how do you organize your flies when it comes to travel and taking them on the road with you, whether you're, in a boat or waiting, or is there anything you do special?
That's funny. I am horrible at making up my mind in this. I feel like every single saltwater trip I go on, I pull all of my flies out of my last fly box and go into a new style of fly box. It's just continuing to try to find the best solution. So for a lot of years, I've worked out of foam fly boxes. That's a great way to travel for saltwater. They're simple. They rinse out easily. I can stay organized, that sort of thing. But what was driving me nuts is it was smashing all my weed guards,
Mm,
which is pretty important when I travel to a lot of these places. So honestly, a lot of my more intricate shrimp have found themselves into bug lockers now, believe it or not, which is great. You kind of open it up and there's all these flies kind of a little bit disorganized, but they're all fully fluffy. It's kind of like imagine a dry fly box where they're not pushed into foam. Suddenly they're all just kind of perfect and looking at you like this. And it kind of calls to you a different way. So I really enjoyed fishing the bug locker this trip for my shrimp and crabs. And then, for my bigger flies, these are 5 to 6 inch flies for giant trevally and the other trevallies. And yeah, I've played with it a lot of different things. And, this trip I did use one of the bigger boat boxes and loved it. It kept all my eggs in one basket. It could live outside of my pack and still be protected. I really like that it has a foam piece on the outside so I can put my used flies on there, whether it is a GT fly or a crab or whatever, just for quick access. So that worked out really good for me.
that's awesome. Yeah, diversity of fly storage is. I feel like it's similar to packs. Like there's the right pack for that day, and then there's another pack that feels like the right pack for a different kind of day.
No, for sure. And then I guess the last one is just always a small fly box. I love the new foam because they can go right here in a pocket, and I can go bone fishing real quick or throw a permit fly in there as well without having to get into a bag or anything like that. So, definitely a quick action box is quite nice.
So you kind of set up home base in the boat, and then you can have a little satellite box essentially to go wade for a couple hours.
You got it.
Love it. Anything else on the gear front that has become kind of a staple in your world?
It's constantly evolving, man. There's for how long people have been making gear, there's always these new ideas that are coming up, and that's why you and I and Brent continue to have cool conversations of the next great thing that we should come up with.
That's it. It's what keeps it fun is continuing to tinker and just like you said with your Alphlexo, it's kind of a living thing once you begin the process,
Oh
which
God,
is
yeah.
super
Yep.
cool. Well, Alec, thank you so much for spending some time with us. For anyone that wants to have any follow-up questions or ask you anything else, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, that sort of thing. You can find me at Alec Gerbec. You can find me here at the Yellow Dog office, Alec at yellowdogflyfishing.com. Yeah, or you can find me out on the water.
That's the best place to run into you. So what's next for you? What do you got? What do you got coming up this year for travel?
Oh, yeah, I'm stoked for 2024 and it only continues to build. So just got back from 2 weeks in the Seychelles where I was at Alphonse and Cosmolito. In May, I'll be heading to St. Brandon's Atoll, which is about 470 kilometers north of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, which will be about a 30-hour boat ride each way to get there. This is definitely one of the
Holy
most remote
cow.
fisheries in the world, but also home to some of the biggest bonefish in the world. Last season, their biggest was a 17 pounder, for example. So yeah, gross. So really stoked to go see that place. Also a fantastic Indo-Pacific permit fishery. Um, After that, that's where I definitely have some wiggle room. I definitely want to spend a lot of time here at home. That's when dry fly fishing will be great here, the greater Montana state. And then October, I will head to the east coast of Australia. I have a hosted trip on a liveaboard out to the Great Barrier Reef. We're going to be messing with fish like blue bastards and permits and all sorts of interesting species. So that'll be a first time for me as well.
Oh, that'll be something to get super excited about.
Yep.
Well, if again, if you guys aren't following along with what Alec's up to, it's super cool. Obviously, he's having a lot of fun doing it. But that concludes our flies for saltwater with Mr. Alec Gerbec. Thank you again, Alec, for the time. If you guys like the content, please make sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for all the fun stuff we've got coming up. And again, thank you again for hanging out.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it, man.